I talk about rules on my channel quite a bit. Things like, here's what you should do, here's how you should do it, here's why you should do it. Something like the 180-degree shutter angle rule. And inevitably, there will always be at least one person, but usually multiple people saying, oh, well, those are just the rules you don't really have to follow. You know the rules, but then you can break them. And they kind of toss it off like the rules aren't that important. It's not that big of a deal if you don't follow the 180-degree shutter angle rule, or you don't follow the 180-degree the line rule in terms of crossing the camera over. And I break this all the time, and I know the rules, and it's not that big of a deal. Well, the thing about rules is that they're not hard set in stone. Like, you have to follow it, and if you don't, then it's going to be an utter failure. The thing about rules is that I like to think of them more as like guidelines, and they're guidelines for how you should do something to minimize risk. And the reason that they're so valuable in terms of following the rules is when you minimize risk, you can factor in the other risks that are inherent to any production, any project. There are always numerous variables at play, always things that can go wrong. So what I like to do is minimize all the fail points or those opportunities where something's risky, follow the rules in those situations, and only break them when you absolutely know that you're not going to follow that one guideline because of a very specific reason. And so that's where that whole, know the rules and then you can break them thing comes from. But what I don't think people understand is that these aren't just arbitrary rules that were made up and then you understand them and then you just break them when you want to or because you like to. It's like they're rules for a reason, and they're guidelines is really what they are, like suggestions for best practices of like, if you follow this, it's gonna be good, like follow this set of instructions here and you'll be safe. There's no problems. When you start breaking the rules, you expose yourself to risk, and that's where problems come in. And like I said, you don't want to have those problems factor into the other problems that maybe there isn't a rule book for, there isn't a guideline set. And this is for not just production, but just anything in life. There are guidelines and things that you should follow that are most likely going to result in the best outcome, versus other things that if you break those rules or you break those guidelines, then that opens you up to risk, and then maybe it's not going to actually go the way you want, and then you end up causing a problem, or something doesn't go right, and you're wondering like, why didn't this turn out the way I wanted it to? And it's like, if you just followed that set of rules, even though it feels really constraining and like you're like, I don't want to follow the 180-degree shutter angle rule. Why not? Because you don't want to use an ND filter? Because you're lazy? Because why? Like, what is your reason for breaking that? What is your reason for crossing the 180-degree line? Like on set, when you say this is the 180 line, and our cameras don't cross that line, why break it? If you have a very specific reason to break it because it's intentional and it's going to make an impact for the better, it's going to make your project better by breaking the rule, then sure, go ahead, break it, step outside of those guidelines, but just know that if it doesn't go according to your plan, you have extra risk there. Maybe the audience will be confused. Maybe the footage doesn't edit well together. Maybe it looks really weird because your shutter's off. Or, when I say stuff like, don't shoot wide open, right? A lot of lenses shoot, like you can shoot at 1.2, you can shoot at 1.4, but those lenses aren't necessarily the best wide open. So I say, probably don't shoot wide open, stop down a stop or two just for that extra sharpness, that extra clarity. I shoot wide open all the time. I love it. Well, okay. Well, when you miss focus because you're taking a shot or you're shooting video and your focus is off, or it's a little soft because the lens isn't as perfect as it should be wide open, that's that risk in that realm of like, you really have to know why you're doing what you're doing, rather than just saying, I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm not going to listen to that because it's whatever. I don't need rules. The rules keep you safe. They're the guidelines that minimize that risk, keep your project on track. So when you follow them, hopefully if everything works out and you follow those rules, those guidelines, the project will actually turn out being the best version of itself, rather than something that had a bunch of these failure points and you broke all these rules and now everything's garbage. I'm not saying that's going to happen, because a lot of time talent and skill and style makes up for a lot of that. But when in doubt, it's good to know the rules and know those guidelines, because that keeps you, in that safe zone where it's going to turn out the way you want.